Hello, welcome to our webinar, Using the CB Scheme to Access the World Marketplace. Thank you for joining us. This webinar is being given by MET Laboratories. MET is a leader in the testing of electrical and electronic equipment for environmental hardiness, product safety, and electromagnetic compatibility. MET operates world-class labs in Baltimore, Maryland, Santa Clara and Union City, California, Austin, Texas, and also runs operations in China, Taiwan, Korea, and Italy. This webinar will run 30 minutes with an additional 15 minutes for questions and answers. Due to the number of registrants, all attendees will have their phones muted. If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your control panel. We will attempt to answer all questions at the end. If you're having technical difficulties, you can contact us the same way or call us at 410-935-6053. That's 410-935-6053. We will try to resolve any technical difficulties quickly. Just a quick note on other upcoming events. In 1 week, MET is hosting a hazardous location safety certification seminar in Houston, Texas. And in September in Baltimore, we are looking forward to our annual Global Compliance Seminar and Crab Feast. You can register for these events at www.metlabs.com. Today's webinar is being presented by John O'Donnell, MET's Safety Lab Program Coordinator. At this point, I will hand over the presentation to John.
All right, thank you, Barnaby. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Met Labs, I'd again like to thank you for attending our webinar. My name is John O'Donnell, Global Safety Administration Manager. This webinar is intended to provide you a brief overview of the CB scheme, how it works, and how it can benefit you. This webinar will run, again, about 30 minutes with a chance for Q&A at the end. John Liu, one of our technical managers and a qualified IECE auditor, will be helping me with the questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so introduction to MET. Who are we? I'd like to start with telling you about us. MET was founded in 1959. We are the first NRTL in the United States after the establishment of the NRTL program by the United States government. We are accredited by the SEC and A2LA for product safety testing. We're approved in over 200 categories, recognized by all major retailers, and we have responsive real-time project tracking. 1992 marks the beginning of the CB scheme, and at this time, MET also became a national certification body in the IECE CB scheme. I should explain that a national certification body, or NCB as I'll refer to it, is an appointed certification body of the IECE that accepts the rules of the CB scheme, which can prepare, certify, and recognize other certifications to grant national certification. All members of the CB scheme have signed a multilateral agreement accepting testing within the CB scheme. And the CB scheme is recognized as an acceptable test method by our accreditors here in the U.S. Who or what is the IEC? The IEC stands for the International Electrotechnical Commission for Electrical Equipment, and that's why it's often referred to just as the IEC. The worldwide system for conformity, testing, and certification of electrotechnical equipment and components. Basically, the IEC saw throughout the world that there were many barriers to trade with all the different country regulations that will require in-country testing or review. So in recognition of this need, the IEC designed a system based on mutual multilateral recognition of testing and acceptance of those results to meet national requirements and facilitate international trade in electrical equipment for the benefit of consumers, industries, authorities, and also to provide convenience for manufacturers. The CB scheme is based on the use of CB reports and CB test certificates, which provide evidence that a sample of a product has successfully passed tests to show compliance with the requirements of the relevant standards. National differences where applicable may be included in order to obtain national certifications where the standard has differences to the base IEC standard. As the IEC would say, the overall end goal of the whole program will be one world, one certification, one mark. Today, as it stands, however, it is one test, one certificate, which can lead to multiple national certifications and multiple national marks. Okay. The website for the IEC is iecee.org. It's a very informative website and has the latest information from the IECE. If you ever have any questions on how a CB laboratory should operate, questions on country regulations, standards, national differences, you can find all that information there. As will be discussed later, there's also several manufacturer test data programs. If you're interested in any of these methods for compliance, you can go to the operational documents available on the homepage and review the requirements for those programs. I also think one of the most underrated but very useful parts of the website is the regulatory requirement section under CB Scheme. Basically, if you click on that, it has a form filled out by participating countries' national committees on their regulatory requirements. It's very informative and should definitely be considered before exporting into that country. It's kind of a work in progress. It's something that they've established recently, but they're trying to put all these requirements in one place. I would definitely recommend going to this section. You can also review the scopes of different laboratories and countries that accept certain standards to determine what standards you may need to comply with to get the national certifications of those countries. This can be reviewed under the same link, but under IECE members. Who participates in the IECE CB scheme? Well, there's over 50 countries, growing participation of about an additional 10 countries over the past 10 years. There's only one that is currently suspended due to their additional requirements. The IEC really wants to not have additional requirements for in-country testing, and some national laws conflicted with those requirements, which has led to that country's suspension. The real purpose of the CB scheme is to add value and lessen the cost for manufacturers. The purpose of the CB scheme is to gain global access while limiting the testing required. While not automatic access to all participants, it greatly helps reduce time to market and certification costs. These are the two main factors in creating the CB scheme. The CB scheme rules allow for the testing to be conducted at a single location, and these results to then be accepted by another organization known as a recognizing NCB in another country. Once your product is tested to an IEC standard for product safety, it shouldn't have to go through a full test program again for acceptance in IEC participating countries. It might not have to be reviewed at all if it is a market that directly accepts the CB scheme as certification. It also allows manufacturers to work with various NCBs of their choice rather than dealing with many different organizations. The IECE is a quality organization that audits every national certification body and certification body test laboratories to qualify them as a quality organization able to test products as necessary. This is how applicants and manufacturers can ensure that what they are getting is a quality, unbiased assessment of their equipment. The base standard for those evaluations is ISO Guide 17025. We'll talk about the quality of the evaluations in the next slide. Okay. Labs that participate in the CB scheme must be audited initially to be qualified as a testing laboratory, and all labs are audited every 3 years if you have an ISO 17025 certification. If the lab does not have that certification, then they are audited by the CB scheme once per year. Again, that standard that is being used is ISO 17025, which is the general requirements for competence of calibration and testing laboratories. This is the common standard used by our accreditors, including A2LA, NAVLab, OSHA, the Standards Council of Canada, etc. 17025 incorporates all elements of ISO 9001, but with additional requirements for testing and calibration activities. The most interesting part to me of the laboratory assessment program of the IEC is that it's a peer review program which participants of other labs, essentially our competitors, come into our labs and audit them against the CB requirements and 17025. It's a very unique and informative process. Being that the auditors are our peers and competitors, we are held to a very high standard as we hold others to. The scheme is really based on that mutual confidence. Our last IEC audits were March 2011 in Baltimore and May 2011 in Austin with successful results. The IEC does its best to harmonize those audits with their forms and regulations to ensure that all auditing is the same and all labs are held to the same standard. If you have any questions on that, John Liu at the end will be a good source for answers for that. Again, the best example I can think of for illustration of how this whole process works would be to take just an example. Take the example of a personal computer manufactured in Japan. The manufacturer sends the PC to a Japanese certification body for a CB test certificate, and upon request, the CB test laboratory tests it to the IEC standards. The CB laboratory then assures conformance to the standard by issuing a report and certificate to the client. Wishing to sell the PC in the USA and Germany, the manufacturer can send that certificate and report to the American or German NCB that are part of the IECE. These bodies can then each review the report and certificate and issue their own national marks. And then the manufacturer will be free to export products to these companies, to these countries. It's really a good example of how the whole process overall works. Prior to the CB scheme, there would be a lot more in-country testing for each of these countries. Okay, while the IEC looks to harmonize global standards, there's always going to be country-specific requirements for national certification. The national differences, special national conditions, and regulatory requirements of all countries participating in the CB scheme are provided to the IECE and then published on their website. National differences from an IEC standard are those requirements in the corresponding national standard, which I'll go into in a little bit greater detail in just a bit, that manufacturers need to also comply with. IEC standards do not automatically include these differences and will be contained in a separate document. Manufacturers should really do their research and know the countries that they would like to export to so that an NCB like MET can properly address all, if any, country-specific requirements during testing and evaluation and include that information in our report. It also makes sense to do the research and analysis on the cost of obtaining those national certifications. When including this information in your request to the NCB or MET, it might even unlock markets you hadn't previously anticipated being open for you. Again, as previously discussed, the IEC does a really great job on providing a central location on their website to find regulatory requirements and information on these participating countries and national differences. We'll go ahead and look at some of the national differences in the next slide. Many countries issue national differences even though they use the same base standard. For example, UL or CSA 6950 both have differences that are not included in the IEC 60950 standard. Some popular examples of these differences would be addressing different languages to ensure proper markings, other possible additional markings requirements, adjusting for different power systems, plugs, cord requirements, reviewing the ratings and certification of subcomponents, with certification of components can be very critical in this process. Integration with the different national electrical codes, routine production line testing requirements, which may not be required by the IEC standard. These are just a few of the possible example differences countries you might be expected to comply with. U.S. participation in the CB scheme. Basically, the U.S. National Committee is, every member country has a U.S. National Committee that will be responsible for that country's activities within the CB scheme. In the U.S., the National Committee is known as the U.S. National Committee. NEMA, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, provides the secretariat for that organization. The U.S. National Committee coordinates all applications of U.S. NCBs to the IECE for recognition and coordinates all U.S. activities and develops national viewpoints in IEC matters. Membership in the U.S. National Committee is actually open to all U.S. national persons or organizations who are directly and materially affected by the committee's activities. Anyone interested in becoming a member should make a request in writing to the U.S. National Committee at NEMA. Okay, receiving U.S. and Canadian national certifications through MET. MET can help you as a recognizing NCB. MET can help you meet the national certification requirements of the U.S. and Canada by utilizing a CB report and certificate to grant U.S. and Canadian national certifications and grant the use of our mark on your product. This is, again, the act of a recognizing NCB. For the U.S., under OSHA regulations, the acceptance of the IECE CB scheme reports to grant national certifications is acceptable. OSHA requires us to receive the report, certificate, and a product sample and review all for accuracy and consistency in order to provide that national certification. The report should also be sure to contain the U.S. and/or Canadian national deviations. The last and probably biggest difference between the two systems are the factory follow-up inspections. MET, as required by our accreditation bodies, performs an initial quality inspection of the manufacturing facility and continued follow-ups after that at the minimal frequency. All U.S. and Canadian bodies that participate have the same requirements on the inspection side, which is not part of the CB scheme. Basically, here I illustrated MET CB scheme laboratories. MET Baltimore acts as the NCB and also as a certification body testing laboratory. And we have associated testing body laboratories in Austin, Texas, and Union City, California, which report to MET Baltimore. Emitel, Shenzhen, and LTA in Korea also act as CBTLs for MET laboratories. CBTLs do not have to be a part of MET, but can be a separate laboratory with an agreement between the NCB and that CBTL. We're always looking for new ways of expanding our CB scheme network to best fit the needs of our clients worldwide and are open to new ideas on expanding that network. On the next slide, I kind of give a basic, typical CB project flowchart. If you want to review the kind of the application process to the testing, evaluation, issuing report, issuing the CB certificate, and then sending that CB report and certificate to other NCBs for recognition and acceptance and granting their national certification marks. Sometimes the CB scheme is accepted directly by the market, so this illustration basically depicts a situation in which you don't even have to send your CB certificate and report to another recognizing NCB. It's just directly accepted by the market. IEC standards, popular question. IECE publishes many standard test report forms for their standards. All standards can be bought through IEC directly or from various sources online, ISS Global, TechStreet.com, etc. It's very highly suggested that manufacturers buy the standards before beginning a test program to that standard. It's really invaluable and will definitely save time and effort later in the process and make communication easier during the process. Our engineers may need to make reference to and discuss certain clauses or marking requirements of the standard. It will be much clearer if you can review the standard as well while going through that information. One question I'm often asked and have to unfortunately answer with no is if MET can provide applicants' manufacturers with standards, but actually we cannot, that would violate copyright laws. But again, as I said, there's various outlets online, IEC, Web Store, IHS Global, TechStreet.com are all good sources to get those standards. Okay. Okay, the standard categories, basically there are about 19 total product categories. MET currently participates in 4 categories and recognizes one other. We recognize the tool category, and basically we've chosen standards that are most harmonized with the U.S. and Canadian regulations. And as harmonization between the U.S., Canada, and the IEC grow, so will our scope. Our scope right now contains information technology equipment, IEC 60950-1, measurement, control, and laboratory use equipment, IEC 61010-1, audio-video equipment, IEC 60665, and medical electrical equipment, which is IEC 60601-1. And basically, I wanted to give a very brief overview of those standards. And I'm going to start with information technology equipment. Over the last 3 years, 43% of all CB certificates issued through the IECE have been in this category. The current standard is IEC 60950-1, 2006 edition with an amendment. It's harmonized with EN 60950-1, UL 60950-1, and CSA 60950-1. Basically, the other standards would include the IEC standard plus national differences. There are a couple particular add-on standards, remote feeding, equipment installed outdoors, large data storage equipment, and those would be separate add-on standards. It's basically applicable to mains-powered or battery-powered information technology equipment, including business equipment and associated equipment, computers, monitors, computer accessories, network equipment, photo printing equipment, and an array of other equipment. Each standard will contain a full scope of what the standard covers and does not cover in the first clauses of the standard. And then there is audio-video equipment, TRON, which is a standard applying to electronic apparatus designed and intended for reception, generation, recording, or reproduction, and respectively of audio, video, and associated signals. Some examples are amplifiers, electrical musical equipment, video projectors, household video games, and more. And an interesting topic, the IEC 62368 is a merger standard of audio, video, and information and communication technology equipment. It's a new standard, and I'm asked about it more and more. It does not fall into the current IEC categories or have any U.S. or Canadian equivalent. It addresses the blend of IT and audio, video, and new technologies. More and more over the years, with technology growing, these standards are intended to be addressed by IEC 62368 as well. It's a new standard based on hazard-based safety engineering principles, a process that helps engineers integrate safety compliance early in the process of product design and supported by sound engineering principles, research, and field data. Hazardous-based safety engineering in short form is the principle of identifying energy sources, identifying if the source could be hazardous or not. The date we're seeing for possible implementation of this standard is 2015. So we're still a ways off, but it could be an interesting topic for makers of audio, video, and information technology equipment to do some research on. Okay, coming back, MET scope also includes 61010, which is measurement, control, and laboratory equipment. It does have some other particular standards other than the base 61010-1, particular requirements for heating materials, mixing and stirring, just a few particular standards. Basically covers equipment intended for professional, industrial process, and educational use, any of which may incorporate computing devices. This has recently been updated from the 2nd to 3rd edition. Some examples of some of the changes are the scope now covers both professional and non-professional products, new requirements for conformal coatings, new requirements for risk assessment, and added requirements for foreseeable misuse and ergonomics. Okay, the next standard, 60601, medical equipment. Current standard for the IEC is IEC 60601-1, 3rd edition. It's not yet recognized in the U.S. by OSHA yet. It involves some different clauses and different ideas that are fairly different from the 2nd edition, so it's taking some time to evaluate those differences. Basically, it's a hot topic in the regulatory community. IEC 60601 2nd edition is similar to other standards in that it addresses the safety of the product, where 3rd edition, however, addresses both the basic safety of the device, the essential performance, and risk management of the device. The idea is to address all reasonable possible hazards affecting the essential performance of the device. A risk management file must be created and submitted as part of that submission. The risk management standard is based off of ISO 14971. It has been adopted by the Standards Council of Canada, but again, is not in use in the U.S. yet. If you manufacture medical equipment, I would definitely suggest looking into this. Submission for IEC type testing. Some of the items that we as an NCB or CBTL would need for the investigation would be a test sample. Documentation would include an operator's manual, setup manual, block diagrams, schematics, manufacturer test data sheets. Component certification information is very important. We'll also need applicant, trademark, manufacturer, and factory information to report in the report. We have a full list available to you on our website. If you go under Met Laboratories and then go to Services and Product Safety Testing, there is a project submittal checklist that you can review with a full list of the items for submission. Okay, the compliance investigation product typically begins with a constructional review of your product against the applicable product safety standards, and the constructional review is generally non-destructive. Typical issues discovered include warnings, markings, electrical ratings, openings in the enclosures, and suitability of components and materials. Following a complete review of the standard, the product is moved into the testing phase. Typical testing includes current power measurement, temperature testing, abnormal operations testing, dielectric strength testing. If the constructional review and testing are found to be fully compliant, a letter is issued to you informing you that it meets the standard along with the IEC report and certificate. If non-compliances are found, a findings report is issued to you summarizing the areas of non-compliance. The findings report summarizes in a clear, concise format all evaluation and testing that has been conducted on your product. Met will go over the findings report with you in greater detail and how the product does not comply with the standard requirements. Okay, a lot of these are kind of questions that are often come up. Project duration. Duration is dependent on the product category and the overall readiness of the submittal. In many cases, the process can be expedited to a shorter completion time if desired. To minimize delays, again, I would definitely recommend seeing the product submittal checklist to make sure that all items are included with your submission. All Met clients are given access to our proprietary online project tracking software called MetTrack. With this software, you'll be able to log on to a secure internet site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to see the status of your product. And again, I put at the bottom, communication is really key to this process. Communication is really important. You will have a project coordinator and a project engineer assigned to the product investigation to discuss any issues with. If any information is needed to complete the investigation, they will send you emails outlining the open issues. A CB report and certificate. A CB certificate from the NCB states that the product complies with the standard with basic information on the applicant, manufacturer, factory, product information, standard information, and is signed by an authorized signatory of the NCB. It also will be accompanied by a full test report with all the clauses of the standard. To illustrate the real growth of the CB scheme, last year in 2011, over 69,000 CB certificates were issued in comparison to 10 years ago. In the year 2000, 19,000 CB certificates were issued. And it's also gained 10 participating countries in the past 10 years. The top 5 categories were IT, household equipment, audio, video, lighting, and medical equipment. Again, the IEC does a fantastic job of putting all these certificates together for manufacturers and test labs. The CB report and certificate, obviously your CB report will look just like this. The example CB certificate was a bit too small, but if you just Google IECE CB certificate, you'll be able to find multiple examples, I'm sure. Yeah. Another question that is often very popular is the CB scheme marking. There is no IECE CB scheme marking at this time. For the IECE, it's actually forbidden to make reference to the CB scheme on your product. National marks are really the way to go and may be required per the country that you're marketing your product in. Another question is CB versus CE. There's really no comparison between the two. They're totally different programs in that one is first-party and one is third-party testing. The CB certificate is issued based on third-party testing of samples of the product against a published IEC standard, while CE marking is a regulatory marking to enter the European market and constitutes a first-party declaration by the manufacturer that the product complies with the essential requirements in the applicable European directives. So some CE categories do require the use of a notified body, but this is a separate program from the CB scheme. CB manufacturer test lab programs is another popular topic. The CB scheme offers several programs for testing on-site rather than at a CBTL. These programs are defined at the IECE on the operational documents page, but I'll go over them briefly here. I wanted to take a look at some of the in-depth issues of these programs. Basically, TMP, or testing at manufacturer's premises, is a procedure by which MET personnel would carry out all testing at your site, and it's definitely a good choice for manufacturers that produce larger equipment where shipping the equipment would not make much sense. Witness manufacturer's testing, if you have the ability to test the product, MET personnel can witness the testing of the product and grant a CB certification. There are also other programs, SMT, which is a procedure which we would evaluate the quality system of the organization and then have an ongoing assessment of the organization and accept testing from the organization to grant CB certificates. Each program is definitely different, but if you want to take a look at those operational documents, specifically operational document 2027, and you can review each program and see which would best fit your needs. Again, MET is always looking for new ways to assist our clients. If you have any questions on these programs, please feel free to submit them to me so we can review your situation and see what program would work best for you. Okay, again, some more of the commonly asked questions. Are the national differences available to the public? The answer is definitely yes. They are available to the public so you can research the applicable differences of a country and see if your product will meet them before trying to market there. These do have to be bought from the IEC, though. What if the applicant manufacturer factory is located in a country where there is no IEC member body? Basically, there is a surcharge for each CB certificate as a contribution towards the operating cost of the scheme. I know that they're thinking about moving away from this, but they still have a surcharge for all products where it's either the applicant, manufacturer, or factory is in a non-CB country. The most common example of this I can think of is Taiwan, who is not a CB participating country. Basically, is there a license fee or annual dues for CB? There is no annual license fee or for having a CB certification. I think the fees question is a big question, and it gets down into the actual evaluation and testing have a cost, and then other recognizing NCBs may have a cost for review and for granting their national certifications. How long are CB certificates valid for? They're valid for as long as the certified product remains the same as it was tested within the initial certification, unless it is canceled by the applicant. Another question just off the top of my head, when submitting to other countries, is a sample required? The answer is possibly. Some countries will require not much from the manufacturer. Others will require fees, paperwork, samples, and in-country representatives, local representatives for those products. And those are just some of the basic requirements. And basically that's it. I'd like to thank you for attending our webinar today, and we're going to go ahead and move into the question and answer portion of our presentation. I put my email on here if you need anything, or feel free to contact me at any time.
If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your control panel. For questions we can easily address now, we will read the question aloud, then give the answer. And as John said earlier, here to help answer questions is John Liu, a MET technical manager. We already have a number of questions in, so give us just a couple of seconds to get oriented, and then we'll start addressing them.
Okay, hi, this is John Liu. So the very first question that I see at the top is from, I apologize if I butcher your name, Alan Malamed. The question is, does IEC-EE audits also away from the U.S. at other countries? My interpretation of that would be, if you're asking if the IEC-EE also audits outside of the U.S. And the answer to that is yes. The CB scheme is global. So I have conducted audits in Asia and in Europe as well.
I see this question, is there a website or location that I can go to see the market requirements for a particular country, or is it covered under the regulatory requirements section in the IEC website? I would definitely check that website. It's a great site, and they're trying to compile all the regulatory requirements of all the countries participating in the CB scheme, which is over 50 countries. It also has a separate section for EMC requirements for countries that participate in the CB scheme, so it's a great resource for your use. Is there already a UL and CSA binational 62368-1 standard published or not? No, I don't believe they've published a standard at this time. Does MET have an expected time frame of when MET will handle the household category? Not at this time. We do not. There's many different standards in the U.S. and Canada for household equipment, and they're trying to harmonize them. And with the latest edition of the household standard, they're coming more and more close. But we do not have a time for implementation of that category yet. You mentioned Taiwan is not an IECE CB scheme member. Could you speak in more detail about the impact of obtaining certification? Basically, they may or may not accept CB test certificates based on the organization that has issued them. Any member country in the IEC CB scheme would have to accept the test report and certificate after review, but Taiwan currently does not have that. So there are surcharges for having an applicant manufacture a factory in Taiwan because they do not participate in the CB scheme. When do you expect OSHA to accept third edition of IEC 60601? How do manufacturers get a US, Canada, NRTL mark in the meantime? We do not know when the OSHA will recognize the third edition. They're really having a problem with not just addressing the basic safety concerns. That was kind of the design of the UL standards, but this standard goes above and beyond and doesn't really just qualify essential basic safety. Right now, a new manufacturer would have to probably comply with both the second and third editions of the standard. Right. Why do China and Korea still require in-country safety testing when we have a CB certificate and test report? They might require some verification testing. That's pretty much up to the regulatory commissions in those countries, such as CQC. They may require some review of the product, review of the report, and verification testing to assure that they get the same results. Where can I see the current enforced versions of the IEC EN standards? The EN standards are published in the Europa standards catalog. If you go to their website, it's going to show you full dates and lists of standards, when they're applicable, when they are going to be withdrawn, when you need to comply with a new standard, things like that. If you go to IHS, for example, if you search upon the IEC 60950-1, it's always going to come up with the latest version of that standard. And as a testing laboratory, we always test to the latest version of a standard. Okay. I believe it was mentioned that CB certificate is valid indefinitely. Isn't it made obsolete by the withdrawal of the standards to which the product is certified? If any changes are made to the product, the certificate then may become invalid. But as far as the IEC lists, they list that it's valid indefinitely unless changes are made to the product. Has the IECE made any progress in commonizing factory inspections? Not much. They have a factory certification scheme, but as far as I know, it hasn't picked up much steam, but they would like to harmonize that in the future for everybody to share in the knowledge and training and share in the use of others' factory inspections. So that is something that they're working on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple questions we weren't able to address now because we don't have the answers right at our fingertips here. But feel free to follow up with us by phone or by email. And also, if you have any other additional unanswered questions, please contact us, and we'll work to get you the answers that you need. Again, tomorrow we will send a follow-up email that will include a special offer and a link to the presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us today.